Hey guys, so I thought I'd go through this other specimen paper with the big question 13, the big scary one, and see what we can make of it. Okay, now I think this one's a little bit harder than the other sample, but it doesn't do anything as a procedure or function, but we do need to do a bit more, I would say, in general with this one. Maybe not harder, it's just more to write. Okay, so again, we have two arrays, and we have a 1D array called student name, and we have a 2D array called student mark. Now again, I believe these have all been made for us, so we don't actually have to make them. However, as I've said to you quite a few times, I like to draw them out, and just so that I can see with some examples what I'm making. So let's start by init the arrays. Okay, so let's say we've got student name, and we've got student mark. Now it says that for the student mark, basically there's going to be a bunch of subjects and they should all be the same number. So we just have to decide. So let's have some students first. So let's have Ada, and let's have Bob, and let's have Chad. Again, 4 letters is very sad, but still. And we can go with this for now. Now, Ada is going to have 3 different marks. Well, first of all, what data type is this? We're going to tell them that it is a array of string. Okay. Now, sorry, the student mark. So let's just have 3 marks for each student. So each student is doing 3 classes, but it should be extendable to be whatever we like. So the number of subjects, it's going to be 3. So Ada is going to have, now does it tell us? I think these are going to be integers. It doesn't seem to suggest that we'll be getting anything that isn't an integer. Don't see anything here that says you can get like a point something. So let's assume it's an integer. So Ada is very smart. She's going to have 90, 100, and 80 for her grades. Now that's going to be a 2D array. Bob, however, he's a bit weaker, so he's going to have 20, oops, not 220, he's going to have 22, 55, and 33 for his grades. Chad, well, let's have Chad being okay-ish, and across the board, let's give him 70, 70, and 70 for his marks. And remember to make our thing. And then this is going to be 2D array of integer. So integer. Okay. So now it specifically gives us some additional variables as well. So let's make those variables. Init variables. So it says we're going to have class size, which contains the number of students in the class. So in this case, my class size is 3. And then we're going to have the subject number, which contains the number of subjects studied. And in this case, it's going to be 3 again. So subject, subject no equals 3, because we're going to have the 3 different subjects. Now, I could have done this as like len or something, but it doesn't matter. For our case, we can choose. Now, again, these are already initialized, so we don't actually have to have these. It just really helps me to visualize what is going to be going on in my program. So what other possible variables might I need to declare or initialize at the start of things? So let's have a dig through this. Okay, so we could possibly have a grade awarded. Yeah, okay. So here, if we look through, total mark for each student, average mark, outputs the name, which is part of the array, combined total mark, average mark, and the grade awarded. calculates, stores, and outputs the number of blah 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 distinctions merit for the whole class. Okay, so I'm possibly going to have average mark. I'm possibly going to have the grade awarded. So let's stick those in there. Well, they're using capitals first. Average mark. Let's set that to 0 to start with. Grade awarded, and that's going to be actually the average mark and the grade awarded is probably going to be arrays, right? Because it says I'm going to store this information. Now it doesn't tell me anything else with this, but let's assume that I have to store these as part of our array, as different arrays. So let's make these two as arrays rather than as variables. So I'll stick them up here. And average mark is going to be an array of integer, and grade awarded is going to be an array of string. Could be a char, but let's do it as a string. Okay, so let's see. So what I have to do, I also have to calculate, store, and output the number of distinctions, merits, and passes for the whole class. So I could choose to do that bit as an array, or I could choose to do it as individual variables. I think for clarity, I think I'm going to do it as individual variables. I think in real life I would probably do it as an array, but still. Okay, so let's have merits equals 0 and passes equals 0. So let's do it as something like this. Okay, so there might be other stuff I need. So once again, if I'm doing this in the exam, I probably want to leave a bit of space beside each section so that I know what's going on. And once again, as I showed you before, and I've showed you in class, I hope, I'm going to take this specification, I'm going to use that as my comments for inside of the exam. Because again, if you don't have comments, you don't get a good mark in this part. And it's really easy to forget it because you get sort of fixated on stuff, but you're going to need that. Okay, so classroom, not classroom, what am I looking for? Program. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to paste those in there. Again, I appreciate you guys can't copy and paste stuff in, but you can write it by hand. Now, once again, I would suggest that if you have enough time, you want to try your best to come up with at least a plan first on scratch paper or scrap paper. And then once you've got something that you feel like you really know what you're doing, then you probably want to copy that into the actual answer section, depending on if you have time. All right, so let's see. Calculate the total combined mark for each student for all their subjects. Okay. Oh, sorry, so I'm probably going to need another. See, glad I left the space. I'm probably going to need something for total mark. So, yeah, aircraft is passing by really loud. Okay, so it's a crazy loud aircraft. Okay, so one sec, I'm going to pause the video just till it goes away and then I'll start again. One sec. Okay, so hopefully, not having much luck with the sound here, but hopefully, now that the crazy aircraft is gone, we can start this. So calculates the combined total mark for each student and all of their subjects. So we're going to have total mark. Now, for each student suggests that we're going to have to use a loop of some kind. Now, we know how many passes we're going to do, so it's going to be a for loop, also known as a count controlled loop. So for x in range, let's go from 0, the start of the array, to the class size. So we're going to repeat for the class size, and we're going to work out the total mark for the student. So the total mark is going to be all of these added together. So we're going to need another for loop. So for y in range. Now remember, for these exams you could write the easier Python thing for grades and thing. I'm just going to keep it simple by doing it the way it could be done in pseudocode, just in case. But anyway, let's go from that. For subject number. Okay, from 0 to the subject number. And I'm going to say that the total, so I'm going to need another thing up here, total equals 0, and I want to do that at the start of my each x. I'm going to set the total to be 0 for each different person, and then for each different person I'm going to say total equals total plus, now what is this? So that's going to be the student mark, and it's going to be the student mark of x, because this is looping through the students. So I could probably write that there. X is the student number, and then y is the mark index. Let's call it index as well. Okay, so for y in range 0 to subject number, total equals total plus student mark x. So add the marks together is what we're doing there. Now I could assign, once I've finished looping through the grades, I could assign it to the total mark. So then I can do total mark dot append the total. Okay, so what's going to happen there? So this is going to go through the students. So that's going to go through these array, this array, and then this array. So that's what the x relates to. Now, every time I'm going to set my total to be 0 for each different student. And then I'm going to go through the individual marks and add them together and get a total. I'm then going to add that total to my total mark array. Okay, done. Then calculates the average mark for each student for all their subjects rounded to the nearest whole number. Okay, so, well, if I've got the total mark, I can easily work out the average mark. Now, I could do this as a separate array, or I could simply say that total, I'm going to need another variable, so I should have left more space. Actually, there's no need for another variable, but just for clarity. So the average is going to equal 0, and here I'm going to do average. I'm going to do the same down here. So for each student, I want to clear the average. I don't need to clear it. I'm going to say the average equals the total divided by the number of subjects. Now it's very clear here that it wants it rounded up to the nearest whole number. Okay, now we could use int, but that might round down. So remember that Python has a function called round. And round is going to go to the number of digits. Now automatically the number of digits is going to be none, and so that should work. But let's just check that separately to see how that's going to work, just so you guys can see what that looks like in the shell here. Okay, so let's take a few new lines and just check it's working as we planned. Okay, so if I said that it was I'm going to round 15 divided by 4. Then I'm going to print that result. It's going to round it to be 4. Okay, and that seems to work. Okay, so it's going to round it to the nearest whole number. Now if I did want decimal places, I could put those in. Now you don't need this for this one, but it might be needed for something else. So we could round to 2 decimal places. Oops. Yep. Oops, that's in the wrong place, sorry. That should be in here, so comma 2. I hate using this sometimes. There we go. Okay, so that would round to 2 decimal places. So by default, it's 0 decimal places, but if you want to, you could use it to round to, especially for currency, it's probably going to be 2 decimal places. Okay, so we're going to round the total divided by the subject number. Okay, now, once again, I could do this separately, but I don't necessarily have to. In fact, my program's probably going to be more efficient if I do it per student. So, outputs for each student, the name. So I'm going to print, now the student name at position X. So remember, X is the student number. Okay, easy. The combined total mark, print total, or I could use my other array, total mark. I'm going to print the average mark. Sorry, let's try and make this a bit more clear window-wise. I can print the average mark. Oh my god, okay. The average mark, so I can print average. Oh, and I forgot to store the average mark. Now we said average mark is going to dot append the average. So I could use either average mark X or I could use average here. Now the grade awarded is where it gets a little bit more complicated. Okay. Now, grade awarded. Now the important thing here is that I look ahead slightly. So here's probably where you're going to get annoyed at the paper and you go, oh, I should have read that beforehand. So if we bear in mind that we need to keep the number of distinctions, merits, and passes, then this bit here should be easy. Now, what does it tell us about our different marking? So if we go back to our paper, it says that greater than or equal to 70 is going to be a distinction. Okay, now it says calculate stores and outputs number of distinctions. So this should probably be, yet again, another array. Again, I may be doing more than is actually necessary here. Oh, and it's got grade awarded. But it's better to have too much than not enough. Okay, so the rule says that if the average is greater than or equal to 70, then we want to output the grade. So it doesn't say I have to say any text or anything with it. So let's just put it in as is. Print. Let's do a print F. And we can do grade. Boom. Grade. No, I don't need an F yet. Sorry, I don't. Grade is distinction. Now, again, I don't know if it really wants me to store these things, but why lose marks if we're not sure? So then I'm going to append that, grade dot append and that's going to be a distinction. Okay, then I also need to remember to count it. So distinctions equals distinctions plus 1. Okay, that's easy enough. Now the next one is going to be for merits, so greater than 55. Now we know it's going to be less than 70 because if it was greater than 70, it would have been put into average. Have I just spelled that wrong? Average. Oh, I just spelled it wrong. Stupid person. Okay, there we go. Then I would have got it here. Okay, so I can do else if. So I know I only have to check if the average is greater than. I only have to check if the average is greater than 55 because by default to get there it has to be less than 70. So if it's greater than or equal to 55, then the grade is going to be a merit. Now notice this is not got capital letters, so I'm going to change this to be small letters as well because they can sometimes be a bit fuzzy. I'm going to append the grade to the grade awarded, and it's going to be a merit. And then it's going to be merit. Now is it merit or merits? Merits with an S equals merits plus 1. Easy so far. Then once again, almost the same. So I'm going to need another elif for passes. And this time greater than or equal to 40. So greater than or equal to 40. Then we're going to grade is going to be a pass. We're going to append pass. And we're going to say passes. Yep. Passes equals passes plus 1. Easy. Okay, then finally, in all our situations, so else, and then we're going to basically do exactly the same again. Print grade equals fail, append fail, and fails. Average, oh, I don't have a variable here, so fails equals 0. I don't know if I actually need to count it. When I output it, does it say? Oh no, it does say fails. So sorry, I should have made that fails variable in advance. And this is where the exam gets hard because if you miss stuff, you got to go back. So again, leaving a big space at the start to add on more variables is generally a really good idea, especially if you're like me. You're kind of used to doing stuff as you encounter it. Anyway, oh, so fails is going to be equal to fails plus fails. All right. Okay. So we've got to here. We've done that for each student. Calculate stores and outputs for the whole class. So once we have finished all this, we have to print data for the whole class. Probably don't need that message, but you know, just habits. And I'm going to let's do it on a new line for each one. Print distinctions, and that's going to be the distinctions variable. And then I'm going to need that for distinctions, merit, pass, fail. Merits is going to be the same as the merits. Passes is next. Oops. Put a colon in here to make it more clear. And you know, I lose marks for this, but just have it. And fails is going to be fails. Okay. So I'm going to put that there. Okay. And then I might want to add some more comments here. Maybe a comment for each block. Again, should have done this as I was doing it. So for distinctions for merits for passes and for fails. Okay, so remember, you get points for comments, you get points for proper variable names, so it's just worth it to put in the extra hassle. So let's just check. Is there anything else I need to do here? Calculate's done, done this, done all this, and done this. Okay, is there anything weird in here that I've missed? No. Okay, so all that's left, and again, you guys don't get to do this, but all that's left really is just to test my program and hope that it does as I think it will. And so let's save this, and we are doing specimen paper 2A, question 13. There we go. Run, fingers crossed. Oh no, what have I done? Total equals total plus student mark X. Oh no! I forgot something really, really simple because I'm stupid. So when I was getting the total for the student mark, I forgot to take the Y value. So I should have had a XY value in there. So I would have lost some points here because I hadn't dealt with it as a 2D array. So sad. Okay, so here we go then. So Ada has total, and got a grade distinction. Now notice here, this is not very nice. So maybe what I should have done is print something more meaningful here. So I could do total, because you get marks for making sure it's all nice and understandable. Okay, so I might have lost a couple more marks there. Now remember, you don't need to get full marks. Sorry, you don't need to get. It doesn't need to be perfect to get full marks. So maybe I wouldn't have lost as many as I'm thinking, but I might have done. Okay, average. So I've got the total. I've got the average. I've got the name. And again, it makes no harm to put in a little bit of extra detail just to make sure we get the marks. Okay, and then grade distinction, grade . Okay, that looks a bit nicer. And I'm also gonna print a space. Again, this is absolutely, you do not need this at all for the exam. I just want to see more clearly. Okay, here we go. So Ada got a total of 270, which is an average of 90, so she got a distinction. Bob, oh, Bob's not very good. Chad got a distinction. Oh, so notice I've also made a mistake here. What have I done? For distinction, I've done it the wrong way around. Ay. Okay, I'm going to blame it on the hot weather. Okay, so this time, distinction, fail, distinction. So I get 2 distinctions and 1 fail. Okay, so what if I was to add in more students just to test it? Let's try and get a merit student. So a merit is going to be, a merit is greater than 55, so let's do 60, 60, 60. 60, 60, 60, which should be an average of 60, and let's call this Dawn. And I need to change the class size to be 4. Okay, so good. So I've got a merit, got a pass. What if I wanted to just get a E? What's the name of somebody with E? Ina? That's an I. Anyway, Eric. There we go. Eric. It's not a great name, but still. Sorry, apologies to anyone called Eric. I just mean it's not. It's longer. I like it to be. It'd be nice if I could get 3-letter words for all of them. So we said that merit is going to. A pass is greater than 40. So let's do 45, 46, and 47, and just make sure that Eric is going to be getting that as well. Okay, so I've got 2 distinctions, merit, pass, and a fail. Okay, so hopefully that gives you an idea of what you have to be doing in the exam. As you've seen, I made mistakes, but you don't need to get everything totally right to get full marks. And even if you don't get full marks, you're probably getting even 10 in this one or a bit higher than 10 is going to put you in the A range. Obviously, if you're aiming for A stars, we need to go a little bit higher than that as well. Okay, any questions? Give me a message below. Bye bye.